This is Shaquille O'Neal. You might recognize him as a 15-time All-Star, former MVP, and Hall of Fame NBA player. A lot of people remember him for his time dominating on the Orlando Magic and the Los Angeles Lakers. But many people might forget that Shaq was a freak athlete in college. And most of y'all probably don't know that although he chose basketball, he was an all-state tight end in high school. And unfortunately, the world never got to see what he could really do at the next level. So today, I will be putting Shaquille O'Neal into College Football 25. Let's see how great this man could have been at football, as we also find out how it could have helped him on the court, as we follow him on his road to glory. Now, coming out of high school, Shaq was one of the top recruits in the nation. He was a 7'1" all-state tight end, so it was no surprise that a lot of teams wanted him to come to their program and potentially push them over the top. But with Shaq wanting to go somewhere that could help him really fulfill his potential, he knew he had to go somewhere that could help him become a better athlete on the field and potentially even give him a chance to play basketball if he wanted to. So when it came to Shaquille O'Neal's college decision, he decided to sign with LSU. Now when Shaq got to campus, they immediately wanted him to move to running back. They felt like if he worked on his running ability, he would become an even better tight end. So they had no problem with him working at both positions, and he was definitely working hard to show them that he was capable of doing both. Ultimately though, by the start of the season, the coaches decided that he would begin his career at tight end. And going into the first game, although he was not going to start, they still told him that they would give him a chance to see what he can do, as LSU was starting their season on the road against USC. Now unfortunately, Shaq didn't really get to play almost at all throughout the first half, but they did bring him in towards the end of the second quarter on a 3rd and 2. And on his first play of his college football career, Shaq was actually able to get wide open for a touchdown, getting his team across the goal line on his first touch ever in college football, scoring some points for his team that also helped them cut their deficit down to 1 possession. Unfortunately though, the coaches decided not to put Shaq in the game for a little while, bringing him back in later on in the 4th quarter on 4th down, and it is now 2 plays in a row where Shaq comes up with a big-time reception, making a play over the middle that kept his team's drive alive. But despite the fact that Shaq had made 2 of the biggest plays of the game while he was out there, the coaches decided to take him out the game again. And ultimately this would result in LSU losing their first game of the year, dropping this one against USC 23-14. And it was safe to say that people were not happy with Shaq not getting more playing time. I mean, he was literally only out there for 2 plays and he still helped lead the receiving room in yards. So in the next game, the coaches decided that they were actually going to have him move to running back. They promised him that they were going to give him a lot more carries and see what he can do against one of the worst teams on their schedule. As in their next game, LSU was about to play in their first home game of the year, where they were set to face off against the UGF Pandas. Now in this game, LSU allowed the starting running back to get their touches throughout the first quarter, eventually bringing Shaq in during the second quarter, and almost immediately he was showing that he had some potential. For whatever reason though, the coaches decided to take him out again and bring him back in throughout the entire second half. Where now up 30 points, they figured that they can just let Shaq chew up as much clock as possible, and it was safe to say that he was doing a great job of doing so. He pretty much helped them chew out all the clock in the 3rd quarter, helping to bring his team inside the red zone where they would eventually be brought to a 4th down and 2. And on this play, they handed the ball off to Shaq on the outside, and he was somehow able to get around the edge for his first touchdown of his college football career. Or at least he thought he did, because it turns out that one of his linemen got caught holding. Like, bro, why are you celebrating? What the hell is your problem?
You stupid.
But although Shaq didn't score a touchdown, he had already helped his team put this one away, as LSU would go on to dominate this game 33-0. And with Shaq actually finishing the game as the team's leading rusher with 125 yards, it became clear to the entire team that they had something special with Shaquille O'Neal, and they actually decided that they were going to move him back to tight end for the next game. But the crazy thing is that the football coaches were not the only ones who had their eye on Shaq, because during the bye week, Shaq was out there playing some basketball with his teammates at a local park, and that man was out there destroying people. Shaq was going so crazy that the LSU basketball coaches had pulled up just to see it for themselves. And you know what, man, they couldn't even believe their eyes. They knew they had to get his ass on the court. But for now, Shaq was committed to the football team because that's what he came here to play. And he was going to try to do his best to help his team come up with another win as they were heading on the road against South Alabama. Now LSU ran a lot of 10 personnel throughout the first quarter, so he didn't come in until the second. But almost immediately he was out there making an impact. But another player who was making an impact in a different way was their quarterback, as he threw a pick that derailed LSU's drive and led them to be down 10 points in the second quarter. Luckily though, Shaq was able to come up with a pair of receptions right before the end of half, getting his team into field goal range and allowing them to only be down a possession going into the third quarter. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't long before the quarterback came out here and threw another pick, giving the ball back to South Alabama, and all of a sudden LSU was in a really bad position heading into the fourth quarter. Luckily, though, the quarterback Ricky Collins was finally able to start getting things going as he threw a dime downfield, hitting a receiver in stride that got his team across the goal line for a touchdown and brought them back in this game. And with the help of Shaquille O'Neal later on, they were able to get themselves down towards the red zone, putting them in great position to potentially take the lead as they got to a 4th down and 3. Where on this play, the quarterback hit a man on a slam route and got the team across the goal line for a touchdown, taking the lead for LSU with less than a minute left. And just like that, LSU had completed the comeback for their second victory of the season, closing this one out 17-13, and Shaq had absolutely dominated all game, putting up 15 receptions for 157 yards. And at this point, it was obvious that LSU had a freak athlete on their team. Unfortunately, LSU would have a lot more work to do in order to get themselves in the top 25 rankings. But with LSU now heading back home, they felt very confident that this next game might help them get there, as they were now getting ready to face off against the 23rd ranked Washington State. Now, for whatever reason, the coaches weren't having Shaq play much at all throughout the first half, and he didn't actually make any real impact in this game until the fourth quarter, tied at 21, where he finally came up with his first reception of the day. The coaches felt like if they brought Shaq in the game randomly in the fourth quarter, then it might throw Washington State off their game. He came up with a big reception here on 4th down and 7 to keep the drive alive, leading to a few plays later where the quarterback would find a man deep over the top, as a wide receiver scores a touchdown for LSU late in this game, giving them the lead and potentially a chance to win. Unfortunately, though, this game would be sent into overtime, and with the game on the line, the coaches knew that they had to utilize Shaq. So in this 4th down and 3, they put Shaq in the slot, and the quarterback easily found him over the middle, coming up with a score that gave LSU the lead, but there was no time to celebrate as this game went into double overtime. Then after LSU gets to another 4th down, it was almost like they knew exactly where they would go, because as soon as Shaq comes off the ball, he runs across the middle and gets another touchdown, his second score of the day. And this one was actually enough to help put an end to this game, as LSU would close this one out 41-38. And although Shaq didn't lead the team in yards, he came up with 13 receptions all in the fourth quarter in overtime, making some of the biggest plays in the game that helped his team come up with the victory. But as great as Shaq was on the field, they still had an LSU basketball coach who couldn't wait to see what he can do on the court. Unfortunately for him, though, he would have to wait a little bit as LSU was now heading into their biggest game of the year. Because with the Tigers now officially ranked for the first time all season, they would have a huge test against another SEC opponent, as they were now heading on the road to face off against the 18th ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Now once again, even though Shaq had been playing well throughout the season, he was not getting the start in this game. They didn't bring him in until the second quarter, where on his first play, the quarterback throws a pick. A horrible one too that Georgia was able to return all the way back to the crib, now giving them a 24-0 lead that actually went to 27-0 in the third quarter. And although at this point this game already seemed lost, Shaquille O'Neal was out there saying hey, and doing everything he could to help get his team back in it. At the end of the third quarter, he came up with a reception before bulldozing over a dude and bringing his team inside the red zone, leading to a first and goal where Shaq was able to get himself open over the middle, coming up with his third touchdown of the season and a big play for his team. Unfortunately, though, it seemed like it was just too little too late, as it turns out that LSU would go on to lose this game, dropping this one 33-22 against Georgia, and a lot of people felt like if Shaq had just got the ball a little bit more, then maybe LSU might have had a chance to actually come up with a win. I mean, at this point in the season, man, Shaq was still one of the team's leading rushers, and despite not starting much throughout the year so far, he was still able to lead the team in receiving. And with Shaq actually feeling a little bit underutilized, he decided that he was going to go ahead and talk to the basketball coaches, because they were still out here begging to see what he can do.
Give me your best. Let me see your best. Yeah, I'm alright.
Yeah, so despite absolutely obliterating the backboard, the coaches told Shaq that they needed him on the team. They decided to bring Shaq in for a practice, and it was safe to say that he was doing his thing. This man Shaq was out there dominating the LSU basketball team, and from that moment on, LSU knew that they had a certified two-sport star on their hands. But although the LSU basketball season was indeed coming up soon, the football team still needed Shaq to help them throughout their season. They had another game coming up at home where they were trying to get back into the top 25, and they felt confident as they were about to face off against another unranked team, the Texas Longhorns. Now, unfortunately, all throughout the first half, this LSU offense was struggling. But once again, one of their main contributors was Shaquille O'Neal. But despite him playing well, the coaches still took him out because they wanted to run some different packages, bringing him back in later on in the third quarter where Shaq was saying, hey, skibidi-doo-bop, excuse me, and breaking off some tackles for a first down. But it wasn't just Shaq who was coming up with big plays, as a wide receiver was able to get wide open over the top, coming up with a catch and run that went for a score, giving LSU the lead in the fourth quarter. But although it looked like they were in great position, Texas would still find a way to take the lead back. And unfortunately, the LSU quarterback was not playing nearly as well as everybody needed him to, because they would eventually get to a 4th down and 20 with less than 30 seconds left. And despite the fact that Shaq was wide open over the middle, the quarterback decided to throw it into double coverage where it got picked off. And in case you guys couldn't tell, man, Shaq was not happy. He went out there and hit the defender with a power bomb like Bobby Boucher, because it was just hard for him to accept that LSU was now taking their 3rd loss of the season, dropping this one 21-17 against Texas. And Shaq didn't really know what more he can do, considering he went for 8 receptions and over 100 yards on the day. He honestly felt like the team was letting him down more than anything. But that honestly just made it easier for him when he officially decided to join the LSU basketball team. And with the season now starting up, Shaq was about to play in his very first ever college basketball game, where in LSU's first matchup, they would be set to face off against the Florida Gators. Now, with Shaq actually being the tallest and biggest person on the court, he had absolutely no problem scoring in this game. All throughout, this man was just backing down his opponents and coming up with some big buckets down in the paint. And Florida already expected that that was exactly what Shaq would do. But they got a little more scared when Shaq would get the ball and say, "Okay, tween, what's up, boy? Excuse me, blow by your bitch ass and yam that motherfucker in the rim." Because at that point, there was damn near nothing they could even do about that. This man was 7'1", moving like Dr. J. They couldn't even believe it. And that's probably exactly why LSU went on to win their first game of the season, absolutely dominating Florida 116-88. And this was actually a game where Shaq only played 10 minutes and still was able to score 27 points with 10 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 3 steals. Nah, this man Shaq was clearly a different breed. But they had to get him right back to the football field because they knew he had a big game coming up the next day. And their coaches actually decided that they were going to have him move back to running back and split carries with the starter. Because it turns out that LSU was about to head into another huge game on the year, where at home they were set to face off against another SEC opponent, 23rd ranked Missouri. Now, they actually had Shaq in there early on in the game, and he did not disappoint. He caught a screen pass early on 2nd down where he helped move the chains for his team, eventually bringing them across the 50 where he was out there breaking off tackles, jumping over dudes, and now helping his team get inside the red zone. Unfortunately, though, this drive would only end in 3 points, and they decided to take Shaq out until the 4th quarter, where once again Shaq would take a handoff and prove that he had no problem taking big hits. But with him also being a tight end, he proved that he was an excellent receiver out of the backfield, coming up with some huge plays as he continued to break off tackles and bring his team back inside the red zone. And now with under 2 minutes left on his 3rd and 4, Shaq continued to just move people out of the way as he got himself around the edge and across the goal line for his first rushing touchdown of his college football career, putting up a big score that extended LSU's lead to 2 possessions and ultimately did enough to put an end to this game, as LSU closes this one out 24-3. And Shaquille O'Neal actually goes on to win his first player of the game, finishing this one with 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. Shaquille O'Neal had become a dominant player for LSU on the football field, but there were still a ton of Tiger fans that could not wait to see how he would develop in basketball. And with the college football and basketball seasons officially overlapping, the fans would have a great chance to see what he can do next, as he was heading into his next game on the court, where LSU would be back home once again to face off against the Michigan Wolverines. Now, it was not long into this game where Shaq was once again proving how dominant he could be. He blocked the dog shit out of one dude, got the ball back at the other end of the court, and then, wait, hold on, look at this. Man, ain't no way. What? Shaq hitting threes now? Oh, hell no. Football got Shaq playing different on the court. Now, it does turn out that he still can't hit them free throws, but he can definitely play some defense still. And it turns out that playing all that running back got Shaq moving like Tracy McGrady. He brought this ball coast to coast, seen one dude that says, took it to the rim and decided to slam that shit home. But yeah, I was taking a timeout too if I was in. At one point, Shaq had all of his team's points, and it looked like he was single-handedly locking stuff down on defense. And by the end of this game, it seemed like everybody had noticed that Shaq was clearly evolving as a player. He was really hitting these boys with that tween, behind the back, step back, let that motherfucker fly. Just drilling threes in front of anybody who was in his way. And being 7'1" and over 300 pounds, Shaquille O'Neal was looking like a unicorn in college basketball. And that's probably why LSU went on to beat the brakes off of Michigan 79-60, helping his team come up with another big-time victory as he went on to score 49 points and had a triple-double with 10 rebounds and 10 blocks. And at this point, Shaq had officially become the most famous person on the entire campus. But the following week, he would actually be leaving campus as the football team was now heading on the road. And they were about to face off against one of, if not the toughest team on their schedule, as LSU was about to face off against the number 7th ranked Tennessee Volunteers. Now in this game, they once again had Shaq out there, a running back, and he was just bulldozing over defenders. But on this opening drive, he was proving that he can do a little bit more than that as he jumped over this one dude for a first down. He just absolutely cleared this dude completely and helped lead his team inside the red zone, where a couple plays later the quarterback would find a man open to the left side who got across the goal line for a touchdown, not only giving LSU the lead but also a little bit of control going forward. As they would get the ball back still up by 7, and Shaq was doing a great job moving his team back downfield. But with less than 2 minutes left without even calling for the ball, the quarterback threw a pick, and the defender was pretty easily able to take it back the other way to set his team up with some points. Ultimately though, Shaq would later on come back in the fourth quarter where he was once again making an impact for his team, coming up with a big play before saying "Shablaka," and moving his team back inside the red zone with less than a minute left in this game. Now bringing us to a 1st and goal where a handoff to Shaq easily gets them across the goal line for a touchdown, officially giving them a chance to tie this game up in the final moments of the game. And it looks like that was exactly what LSU was going to do until they missed the field goal, and all of a sudden they were taking another loss on the season. And at this point, Shaq was so mad that the team kept losing that he ultimately went to the coaches and demanded that they switch him to quarterback. He could not stand this dude Ricky Collins being so weak all throughout the season. And with the coaches not wanting to completely lose Shaq to basketball, they decided to oblige and let him become the starter. But now a lot of people could sense that there was some tension coming from the QB room, and Shaq had some reporters asking about how he felt about his backup quarterback's future going forward.
Guangdong Tigers. Ni hao! Ni hao! Ni hao!
But now that Shaquille O'Neal is officially the starting quarterback for LSU, he's about to lead his team into a tough game on the road against an SEC opponent, where LSU would now be set to face off against unranked Mississippi State. Now early on in this game, LSU would actually get the ball off a turnover, and it wasn't long before Shaq would make an incredible throw for a touchdown, now coming up with his first passing touchdown of his career. And the LSU Tigers could just feel the energy lifting this team up. Now everything wouldn't always be great for Shaq as he was 7'1" and he definitely wasn't the fastest. But even when his team was put in some tough positions, Shaq would prove that he was more than capable of making some big throws downfield. He had the Mississippi State fans absolutely shocked that he was able to do this. And it definitely would not stop here in the first half as they would eventually get the ball back in the fourth quarter up by 18. And Shaq would continue to sling the rock out to his playmakers who once again got across the goal line for another touchdown, putting up some points that extended LSU's lead to 4 possessions. And with that score, Shaq was able to get his team back on track and come up with another victory on the season, absolutely dominating this game 35-3, coming up with a big win over a rival where Shaq actually won player of the game, passing for a little over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. And at this point, LSU fans from all over the country had known with 100% certainty that their new starting quarterback was going to evolve into a big-time star. He came out here in a game against Auburn where even though he was under pressure, Shaq was still able to sling that ball downfield where he eventually found a man wide open, coming up with a big-time completion where the receiver brought his team across the goal line, putting up points that seemed to give his team a ton of momentum going forward because they would eventually be up 41-7. And even with his team already having this game wrapped up, Shaq did not give a damn. He came out here on 4th down and 15 and fired this ball out to the left side of the field where it was once again caught, making a play to a receiver who once again brought the ball over the goal line for a score. Shaquille O'Neal had the entire stadium jumping because everybody there knew that LSU had come up with another dominant victory, beating the Auburn Tigers by 40 points. And Shaq went out there and had a hell of a game by throwing for over 380 yards and 4 touchdowns. And at this point, it was pretty obvious that Ricky Collins didn't have shit on Shaq. Without really starting much throughout the season, Shaq was putting up some great numbers for a freshman. And it continued right into a game against Kentucky where Shaq would find a man in the end zone for another touchdown, putting up points early on that seemed to set the tone for LSU. But soon they were up by 14, and once again, even with pressure, Shaq was delivering dimes downfield, finding the number 1 receiver over the top who got LSU across the goal line for another score, putting the team up by 21 already. Once again, Shaquille O'Neal was playing incredible, and it turns out that he had already done enough to put his team on a 3-game win streak, as LSU went on to dominate Kentucky 31-0. And at this point, it seemed like Shaq might still have a chance to get his team to a national title, and he had a lot of reporters asking him what he'd be willing to do in order to get his team there.
Shaq, let's just say that a snake bit your mom right up here, right in the chest area. Would you be willing to suck the venom out to win the title?
No, but I will with your wife.
Thank you, Shaq.
And on top of potentially getting his team back in title contention, Shaq was also in position to potentially win a Heisman Trophy. He had a chance to become the second one to do it for LSU since Billy Cannon in 1959. But in order to keep that possibility alive, he would have to have another great game to close out the season, as LSU was now heading back on the road to face off against another SEC rival, the Texas A&M Aggies. Now early on in this game, Shaq showed his ability to run the play action, as he did a great job rolling out right and firing this ball towards the back of the end zone for a touchdown, coming up with a score that seemed to give LSU a lot of momentum, but soon they would be down 10-7. But even in one of the toughest environments in the country, Shaq still showed that he was capable of standing in the pocket and firing the ball over the middle for some big plays, eventually getting his team towards the goal line where on second down, another play action pass was snagged out of the air by the tight end, coming up with a touchdown that helped take the lead for LSU right before halftime. It's kind of crazy because Shaq was playing so well that the opposing team seemed to be a fan of him. Oh man, you're Shaquille O'Neal. I almost got you there, didn't I?
Oh yeah, man. Kind of like how I had your sister in the hotel room last night. Her name Felicia, right?
Oh nah, see, Shaq didn't have to do that young man like that, but he did have to do Texas A&M like this. Scrambling across the goal line for a touchdown to not only extend LSU's lead to 2 possessions, but he also did enough to help officially put an end to LSU's regular season, as they would eventually come away with a 42-10 blowout victory, mostly thanks to Shaquille O'Neal, who had 6 touchdowns on the day, earning himself his first ever SEC Offensive Player of the Week. But it turns out that as great as he helped LSU play down the stretch, they would have no chance of playing in the conference championship. And unfortunately that meant that not only was Shaq losing out on the Heisman to a honestly weak-ass Heisman Trophy winner, but they would also have no chance of playing in the national championship, as they were ultimately relegated to a low-level bowl game. The good news is that Shaquille O'Neal had got a lot of recognition as one of the nation's best players, and he even earned himself a nod as a freshman All-American at quarterback, possibly due to the fact that he had passed for over 1,000 yards on the season, went for over 500 yards receiving, 500 yards rushing, and totaled 25 touchdowns on the year, clearly establishing himself as the most impactful player for LSU. But unfortunately, although Shaq was looking forward to playing in a bowl game against Miami, it was actually scheduled on the same day that the basketball team needed him to travel on the road against Duke. And he was definitely not going to pass up an opportunity to come up big against one of the best teams in the nation. Now, almost immediately after tip-off, it did not take long for Shaq to have an impact for the team, using the screen that allowed him to drive to the paint and slam this ball through the rim. And soon after, Duke realized that their only chance would be to double-team Shaq. But as much as that seemed to work initially, he would just get the ball right back and immediately green this thing for 3. Man, this dude Shaq was starting to look like one of, if not the best player in all of college basketball. And he continued to prove it later on as his team was eventually down by 3 late in the 4th quarter. But Shaq would show how clutch he was by taking this 3 and making it, tying this game up with less than 30 seconds left, and eventually this game would head into overtime. We're at the end of it now tied at 119. Shaq unfortunately was not able to beat the buzzer for the go-ahead basket, eventually sending this game into double OT, where this time Shaq was cooking people up at the rim, coming up with a big basket and a foul that put his team up by 11 with less than a minute left in the game. And just like that, Shaq had helped his team come up with a big victory on the road, closing this one out against Duke 140-131. And it was another game where Shaq proved that he was just better than everybody else on the court, putting up 50 points and 21 rebounds. And with Shaquille O'Neal having evolved into a dominant player for LSU on the basketball court and on the football field, everybody knew that this program was going to be in great hands going forward. Because with Shaq being one of the best players in the country at 2 different sports, there was a great chance that he could help LSU win multiple national championships. And if you want to see Shaquille O'Neal try to win a championship in both football and basketball, be sure to get this video to 1,000 likes and subscribe to the channel down below. Also, be sure to comment down below who else you guys want to see next, and YouTube thinks you'll like one of these other stories until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope you all have an incredible weekend as College Football 26 approaches, and other than that, I'ma catch you guys next time.